Okay, we're starting, guys. Good evening. It is February 1st, 6:30, and we will now open the meeting of the CDAC. And our first presenter is Jim from the CoC. Oh, excuse me, Jim, we need to do attendance. Thank you very much for reminding me. Starting with Brandy.
Brandy Brown, District 3.
Justin McGregor, District 7.
Kenya Middleton, Mayor Appointee.
Mary Ann Callahan, First District.
Michelle O'Loughlin, Fifth District.
Marilyn Austin, Sixth District.
Dawn Ciccone, District 2.
Thank you. Okay, Jim. We are ready. We'll,
I'll let Steve start.
Okay.
Steve ran the meeting. I wasn't actually at the meetings.
okay.
Okay, so kind of the way I looked at this is, so just explaining what the role of the CoC is in regards to the annual action plan. They're supposed to review any programs or activities that are going to be funded with with our entitlement money that affect the homeless. So kind of the way we've always done this is they just review the ESG applications. Technically, they probably should review any CDBG applications that deal with homeless as well, but we've not really gotten to that point. So we had a meeting with 3 agencies that were not applying for funding. Well, people from 3 agencies: Kelly Robertson from Greater Opportunities, Tim Lockwood from Catholic Charities of Cortland, and Karen Johnston from Opportunities for Otsego. So basically, they went through all the ESG applications, and the weird way I wrote all these numbers is just kind of my own way of tracking this stuff. But basically, when it came down to it, they're recommending, so we do not know how much ESG funding we're going to get yet, but whatever we get, give 40% to Family Enrichment Network for their homelessness prevention program. And then amongst all the others, pay their salaries only of what they requested, but the same percentage. So after you take the 40% off for Finn, you look at the amounts you got left and divide that as equally as possible amongst using the same percentage for salaries. So if, for example, the YWCA asked for $44,146, their salaries were only $26,000. So if you gave them the same percentage of that funding for their salaries, you'd have the same numbers across. So it took us a while to try to work around this, but that was the final number. Was basically you pay for salaries only, and we're going to encourage that to go through the entire process. But hello, oh sorry. So it keeps going in and out, doesn't it? I don't know why. Anyway, so that's kind of what we're looking at here. So the numbers here are confusing. I will translate this into something a little bit more useful once we get the final ESG numbers, which we don't have yet. So this is just kind of a scratch sheet for now. So, but Jim, what he's able to do here is, if you have questions about the current situation of the homeless in the area, that needs, as a normal agency would come in and say, our agency does XYZ to serve this population. This is why we need this funding. The ESG funding, you have to kind of look at it from an overall perspective. So Jim's group, Northern Creations, actually are in charge of our coordinated entry system. And Jim is also what I refer to as our HMIS guru. So he is involved with coordinating amongst all the agencies to make sure their federal data is correct. So I will now pass it over to Jim.
So Steve, the only question I had is put down salaries.
No. So Finn is 40% of, in fact, Finn is probably going to be funded fully, plus that'll include salaries and everything else with them. But yeah, you're right, because it's homelessness prevention, a certain amount has to go for rent assistance. Yeah, correct. So
Jim, could you make sure that your microphone is on and that
Can you
you're
hear me
close to
now,
it so
or-
we can hear you?
Yeah, it's ongoing.
Yes, they're very fussy.
It goes to show you, Steve. The most expensive isn't always.
I think it's on.
I think you're okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
on.
just talking.
Can you guys hear me or?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So if you guys have any questions, right now our homeless is actually running about 150% over what it normally does because we're still having issues with the pandemic or just no place to put anybody. So we could put them in gymnasiums. That's how many there is. We have close to, I have like 100, there's like 150 just in motels right now.
So the money that we can give you will only help you to have. staff.
Right, but that's our normal money. We actually got federal money to help with the other stuff.
Okay.
It's just, there's just no housing to put them in. It's just,
So it's more a question of space than funding?
right.
Wow.
Well, the government's got to decide to start building housing or the crisis is never going to end. I've been doing this for 23 years and we're 33% worse than we were 20 years ago,
Wow.
just because of the pandemic. We were making good progress before the pandemic, but the pandemic just threw everything right into the toilet. There's just nothing there. So,
Has Jason Wright reached out to you from Chrysalis yet?
no,
So Jason Wright is heading up the agency we hired for the home APR funding. And so that funding is specifically for housing for homeless. So I know he's talking to a lot of people. I will make a note on my actions for this meeting to send him an email, make sure he reaches out to,
Right.
he should be reaching out to Fairview. He should be reaching at least out to Debbie through CES, but he should be reaching out to you as HMIS lead. So
right. The other thing I want you guys to know that I'm retiring in September, so this will be the last one I do unless Steve asks me to do something for the city. So.
Mhm.
so,
Well, you've opened the door. I'm sure Steve will walk right through it. So that's cool.
um,
Can you explain to especially new members why FEN is getting it's full, what it's asking for? Could you explain that?
There's just no housing for anybody. The student housing really takes away a lot of housing for low income. There's just no medium or low income housing for.
And they
anybody.
provide that, they're the only ones who provide that specific service.
Right. so,
Okay.
well, there's a formulaic aspect to it too. Amongst your ESG funds, you can only spend up to 60% on emergency shelter and street outreach because HUD does not want all of ESG funding to go to shelters or community meals or anything like that. They want some of it to go to housing because HUD has what's called the housing first model. That being said, and just so you also know, the city is not going to ask for any administration on this ESG funding going forward because it's too difficult to track accurately. So amongst that, we're going to pretty much force the 40%, but the only agency in town that really can deliver homelessness prevention would be FEN.
Are there any other questions for Jim?
I just had one quick question. Ben is for the Virgil Street housing. That's what that's for? That
What?
house
What was that?
for Ben, that's,
Put your microphone.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I was talking into it. The, the family enrichment, that's for the Virgil Street housing. Is that where?
No, that's actually, we have two projects. We usually do rental assistance and homeless prevention under FEN.
Okay.
That's just what they call their.
Okay.
program now,
I was
believe.
just wondering. I thought it
See.
was the house that they had. Wondering. if that was-
Yeah, that other program for that street over there, that's funded through OMH and Florida.
Okay.
Wondering. Marilyn, you had a question?
It's doing it, sorry. Like the college over there, Practical Bible Davis College, that's got plenty of beds and stuff in there. They don't put, they can't put them up or help you out or don't.
No, we actually tried to get what they call a warming center set up here in the city and had issues with. Code basically. They wanted it built and all of this stuff. Well, you're only looking at something that's gonna operate for 3-4 months a year. It's not gonna operate year round.
Yeah, like a winter, I mean, like,
Right. we
and
just
I know
need-
that's abandoned over there or not being
We just
used.
need
I don't know. I don't
someplace like
understand.
college, like it would be no different, Stephen. I meant to tell you, probably the mayor could have done that under a state of emergency. Overrode that because we did it during the floods. We had.
Oh, force the colleges to, or have the colleges use
Right,
that.
we had that stuff all over town. I had people in Albany all over the place at that time. So we had over 7,000 homeless.
I mean, it's only for 3 months
Right.
but until the
And
weather,
it basically all it is they come in at 5 o'clock and they have to leave at 7 in the morning. But it gives them out someplace overnight, because the motel, we can't get any more motels when they're full. It's just,
I don't know, I think maybe you should look into that. Over there, through that college, not being used, it was used
yeah.
for
that
COVID,
would be-
COVID center.
Think with practical Bible, the housing units are on the outside and they've been turned into apartments and they're for rent
Yeah.
or rented out. Or
Really?
Davis College, well,
Davis?
Practical
Davis
Bible,
College. Really?
Davis, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, you can see them on Facebook. $1,400 a month.
Gee,
Wow.
that doesn't even sound right. I mean, but okay,
Any other questions? for
I don't
Jim?
know, I know they used it for COVID over.
Is there someone going to be replacing you? And is there someone that you already have?
Yeah,
that's-
there's gonna be somebody replacing me, but I don't know what agency it's going to be yet, so they have to vote on all that stuff. It's been, I started the process last September, so that's how long, and we still haven't made up our mind what we're doing yet, so. And I actually retired in September.
Wow.
September this year, right?
Unless this gets dragged out. It's gonna get dragged out because I got reports that.
Yeah.
Have to come out of our system all the way through next March, so I'm still gonna be working on, so.
Jim, is
No
that something you could train up someone to do?
If they decide to do that, yeah.
Oh, they're thinking of doing an outside agency?
Yeah, they were looking at CARES, I think, on it. So. I'd like to see the COC do it all themselves.
Yeah.
We have more than enough money to fund all of that, so I don't know why they're not doing it.
Well, that, and we can use ESG HMIS funding for that specific thing. But then again, that means you're taking away from the shelters and the street outreach at the same
Yeah,
time.
they have more than enough money for an executive director and that kind of stuff, but getting them to do it. Nobody wants to do it, unless.
Yeah.
And I've done it for how many years?
You know what? Because, would it be this funding or would we, no, it would be this funding stream. Never mind. Because I was wondering if we could, because Finn is asking for less than the 40%. And I was wondering if we could shave off a certain percentage to provide to, it's not going to be enough to make a difference. I was thinking maybe using that for HMIS funding to kind of like
I got.
hire someone to do, carry over the
I've got
transition.
plenty of HMIS funding.
Okay.
It's not like, because we bill out all the counties for green. So it's, like I said, there's more than enough there for somebody to do it. It took me 23 years to get it there because in the beginning, there was not enough money to do any of it, so.
So if there are no other questions, we can thank you very much
Thank you.
for your service.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate
And
it.
I have
happy
a thing
retirement.
for, Pat's, you want me to give it to you? To check the brief thing if they want to. What Pat's program does there.
And seriously,
That's that CBG. Mayor.
and Jim,
Yeah. You told me not to have to do a couple things.
Oh, I mean, no, not that.
I'll tell you later.
Yeah.
I'll tell you later.
I thought you meant for HMIS. You need.
Right. Yeah, but that's all it does. That's-
All right,
we've never come in front of CDAC.
I know, but the issue is that one of the things that non-competitive, I think it's non-competitive. As a whole.
Yeah, then tell them what you want.
Yeah.
We've not, like I said, we've never done it.
Yeah, but there's like 4 other agencies that kind of take, look like, and I'm like, well. That was good. But I'll reach out to that. Thank you.
and thanks for 23 years. Really,
Enjoy your retirement.
that's huge. I'm sure.
Well,
It's nice to be needed.
Debbie's still doing CES, right? She's gonna continue doing CES, or is she retiring too? Okay. Okay. Yep. I get it.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's it doing? It's kind of outside of our purview, Our next speakers, I'm sorry. DPW? Good evening.
Hello. I'm Bernice, presented here for the last several years. I have since moved out of Public Works. I've moved to a different department within the city. This is Josh Paludi. He has taken over as a street superintendent.
Yeah, you have to get kind of close to
You
that
gotta
for
get
them
close,
to be
Bernice.
effective.
Is that
Yeah.
better? Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
much better. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm Bernice. I was street superintendent for 8.5 years in DPW. So I've presented these several times. Thank you. I have since moved to a different department in the city. Josh Paludi has taken over as a street superintendent. So he will be doing these going forward. So as it's his first time doing this, he's new to the role. We're just kind of going to do it together.
Thank you. Josh, we have new members, so could you just go briefly over what it is you do as it is, applied to the block grant?
All right, the DPW is in charge of 150 miles of city streets. With the funding, we're gonna do some mill and pave work. We use funds from CHIPS and CDBG for all mill and pave projects. The CHIPS stuff is split between us and engineering, where the CBDG funds are used just for milling and paving. Whereas what is CHIPS? What is it exactly?
CHIPS is funding that we get from New York State DOT. It's the Consolidated Local Streets and Highway Improvement Program. So every year, the city is allotted money from the program, and that money can go to only specific things that CHIPS allows. So typically we use that money with engineering for CHIPS allocated work. So projects that can be used with that money get split between engineering and DPW.
And how are the streets determined, the ones you do every year?
So we do surveys of the streets every year. I don't know if Steve gave you a list of the streets that we are presenting here for the 2024. If you look at the far left column, there's a RB survey. They're all number 4. So that's a survey that we do. It's basically a software system where a camera is mounted on the front of a car and you drive every street in the city and it uploads into the software and they analyze the road every 10 feet and gives you a rating of that segment of road. So 1's the best, 5's the worst. So we have a rating for every street in the city. So typically we like to obviously do the streets that are in the most need of work.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Which specific streets are you going to be milling and paving with CDBG funds?
So we're submitting Liberty Street from Robinson to Frederick, Pern Street from Robert to Liberty, Lyon from Shenango to Liberty, Pleasant Ave from Pleasant Street to Truesdale, and Pleasant Street from Shenango to the dead end.
And you can do all those with 154,000, you think?
Yep, that's.
I may follow up with you tomorrow about those. I just remember that really quickly, but to get the sections. And those are all CDBG eligible from the list you sent me?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
Any
Just
other
a-
questions?
Just a quick question. Do you still utilize the app?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
I do use it and I just don't feel like I get the response I used to get.
So they're still going to me now, and I do apologize for that. Josh is, as he's taking over more responsibilities, it will transition to him. You are correct.
Okay.
I do need to spend more time on it, but it's, with everything else that's been going on. But Josh is going to take over and he'll make that more of a priority. So I apologize.
Well, he'll get to know me then. The city of Binghamton app.
Do we have any other questions for DP, for the? No,
I just make a comment
go ahead.
just for our new members. I just was going to comment that I did not understand that the money for paving from our this block grant can only be used for streets that fall within a certain zone in the city. Is that correct?
Yeah, Steve could probably answer that one better, but as
So if I think that there's a certain segment of, like Glenwood Ave, we talked about before,
Mhm.
that was really bad.
Mhm.
But it was explained to me that these funds couldn't be used for Glenwood Ave because it was primarily business and not residential. And did not
I
fall in
remember that discussion.
the
so Steve,
monetary.
yeah, she's asking about the criteria for
So
CDBG.
the criteria for a CDBG eligible street is it has to be within a low mod area, or it has to be within an area that's at least 51% or more low mod. And it has to be primarily residential. So the way I've worked that out, because I have to have like a standard I stick to every year, is when DPW, Bernice sends me this list of like 80 streets, by the way, thank you. And I go through each little one and I look and see, is it mostly in the LMI area? It doesn't have to be 100% in the LMI area, but is at least 51% in the LMI area. And then I look and see if the frontage on all the buildings is land use residential, either single, two, or multi-family. And that's the criteria we stick to keep consistent. So we're making sure we're doing basically a HUD eligible mill and pave project. Can you use CDBG funds for a commercial area? Yes, you can, but it's dealt in a different way. It becomes a thing like, you would have to do something like make a determination of how many jobs were created by the nature of doing the milling and paving or something like that. So it becomes a little bit more complex than just saying, these are all residences and then it's a 51% or more LMI area. So it's the other weird thing is it's contextual. So DPW could give me a 3-block range of streets that is eligible, but if it was 2 blocks, it very well could not be eligible for the same section because of that criteria of how I measure things. So does that make sense? Kind of. So it's based off of, because they'll give us a list and it'll be like 4 or 5 blocks long. And I have to look at the whole thing in the greater context of what we're doing to make it fair. And so that's kind of the criteria for that. Now, I think CHIPS funds can be used for anywhere, right? That's what I'm not sure of.
Yeah, chips can be used for, as long as it's a city street in our inventory, then yes.
I guess I should raise the other point because this has come up before and you guys may have run into this too. The CDBG funding and probably CHIPS funding, it has to be for a city street and there are non-city streets in the city of Binghamton. So we've had people, I've had someone yell at me before because there was a county highway access or something, or state highway access that was being repaired and they were upset. And I'm like, you got to talk to the guys in the other building. We don't have any control over that. So but yeah, that's kind of the thing.
Thank you. Any other questions? We thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, she was good. Can the record show, Deb, you're here?
Yes, thank you.
Can we do you? Okay. Okay. If we can look at the minutes now, guys, maybe we can do that, and then Steve will give us a small presentation. Are there any comments on the minutes from the last meeting? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the
Second.
meeting from January 18th, 2023.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The minutes are approved. And this is planning, right? Okay. Michelle catches these things. She really does.
Fortunately, since you've approved the minutes, that means you must legally change your name to match the minutes. I believe that's how law works.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. Yeah. Okay, we have our next presenter.
I missed that in my study.
You are welcome. Guys.
No, I missed a typo on the bottom when I read what he put forward yesterday.
Good evening.
Hello.
And just so you know, Juliet, I did hand out a copy of the thing you had sent me.
Yeah, you have to hold it very close to your, so we can hear you.
All right.
Can you hold it closer?
One through five.
That better?
Better.
Okay. All right, I'll
Never
do my
mind.
best. Are you ready for me to just
Yes,
start?
we are.
Okay, we got it.
You have our undivided attention.
All right. So my name is Juliet Burling. I'm the Director of Planning, Housing and Community Development, and I'm here to just ask for some funding for some projects that we really need done.
Juliet, can I ask you to hold it a little bit closer? We do have a colleague up there who may have a hard time hearing you.
I think we got new, I think they got new batteries and I think there's been a problem with some of the microphones. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's related
Yeah,
to it or
I mean,
not.
it's ridiculous how close you have to keep it.
Okay, there. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so,
you.
so I guess I'll just jump right into it then.
Please do.
All right, so we're asking for funding for 4 primary projects for the planning department. We are looking for money to update the zoning map. When the comprehensive plan was adopted, 2014, 2015, it didn't include updating the zoning map. And since then, we've had new additions. Let's see, well, we have the cannabis regulations, we have new student housing codes, we've had 2 new historic districts. So we need to have the whole map redeveloped to track the changes to our zoning code. Let's see, I'm also asking for funding to conduct a housing inventory for the city of Binghamton. One has not been completed since 2014. So this would identify, the amount of housing, the housing stock, single family, 2-family, 3-family apartments. If it's abandoned, if it's vacant, if it's rental or single or a homeowner occupied. So just all of the basic information of our housing. So with that inventory, we can then identify, the gaps and the needs, rather than just making assumptions. It helps us to target our resources. I'd also like funding to help complete the local waterfront revitalization plan, which the original was written in 2005, I think. And then we won funding to update it in 2015. And we're still working on updating it. So we're at the point now where it just needs to go through the final process, but we've expended the funding. So the grant's been completed and closed, and now it's just pretty much on me to complete it. And I don't have the time. I can work with a person and oversee it. I know what needs to be done, but so I'm looking for funding to help finalize that, get it adopted by city council and approved by DEC. And then the other project I'm really hoping we can get funding for is developing an open space ordinance and an ecotourism plan. Now, the open space ordinance would cover all of our parks, because currently the parks of the city of Binghamton are listed as owned by city of Binghamton. They don't have a separate designation. So they're not listed as parks or as protected open space. They're not in our zoning code. So they're owned by the city of Binghamton, which means they can be converted to other uses. Chances are they're not going to be, but if they're given a designation as open space, then it's a protected code and they'd have to go through zoning board of appeals to change that use. And the ecotourism plan would build on that and identify areas of either need or access or availability and tie it into the whole outdoor recreation plan that we're working with parks to encourage. So, and it's a great way to have people realize what's available in Binghamton in terms of outdoor recreation, bringing it all into one spot. And when you identify what you have as a community, it helps you to realize what you don't have. So you can build the plans and look for outside funding. So the total was about 100,000. 75 to 100,000 was my estimate. And that's just based on, you know, asking contractors and consultants I've worked with and doing online research. So these numbers are solid ballpark estimates for the budget. I have to be honest. Okay, and all of these proposals will pretty much benefit the entire city community. I know I was supposed to identify like a targeted area that would, you know, be benefited most by this. But the local waterfront revitalization plan is the one that is most specific because there's a water boundary area. And that covers, since we have 2 rivers, you know, a large percentage of our community. But all of the other initiatives would benefit the entire city. So. Okay, and then the activities would consist of data gathering, studies, analysis, preparations of the plans, identification of actions that would implement the plans, and then going forward.
Thank you. Any questions? I have one, Dr. Burling. Is this in addition to, we don't have our spreadsheet, our normal spreadsheet?
Uh-huh.
That would indicate, you know, because some of the funds, I know go to salaries and things like that. This is in addition to?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, this would be mostly to hire outside
okay.
support.
Okay, so when we see our spreadsheet, we'll see you twice.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
How often do they update the zoning? How like,
Well, we've updated the code as needed. So I think about, was it 2 years ago? Remember, we went through a huge overhaul of our zoning code and we not to make a lot of changes, but just to make it more consistent, coherent, and then we make individual changes for code as needed. So it's kind of an ad hoc, you know.
yeah, so how do you determine when it's as need? Like, when does that happen?
Well, we keep track of zoning requests,
Okay.
changes, either use variances or area variances.
Okay.
And if there's, you know, like, for example, carports, we had a lot of people wanting carports, but they already had accessory structures and they couldn't have a carport. And so we kind of modified it to allow it because of the demand for it. So things like that. So we'll do our own analysis and say, okay, this is becoming more of an issue. More people are asking for this type of a variance. So maybe we need to look at the code again, you know. And then as development occurs and moves into areas that haven't been as heavily developed, we'll see that the codes we have in place don't match the current land use. And so we'll go back and, you know, it takes an act of not Congress, city council, I guess. We write a request for legislation, and go to city council and ask for permission to modify the code. So, but what we really need to do is update our map to match the changes in the code. So. to
When was the
reflect
last one?
that.
2013 or something?
So
10 years.
Sounds like an undertaking.
it is.
10 years. I mean,
And we can't have interns anymore, where they haven't let us bring interns back since COVID. And so, you know,
Mhm.
I had a lot of intern research. We usually had 3 to 4 every semester. And so without that manpower, it's really slowed things down. And I'm not sure whether they won't let us have them this semester again.
Do you said you're not sure why they won't let you have interns?
They're reviewing the program. Yeah.
Any other questions, Michelle?
So are you talking about the comprehensive plan, Juliet?
Mhm.
So it was 10 years ago was a comprehensive plan.
Yep, yep.
So then,
Well,
but
almost 10, like
so then zoning wasn't part of that at that time.
the zoning map wasn't updated at that time. No,
Right.
and normally they do go hand in hand. But it didn't.
Any other questions?
You're talking about the parks being owned by the city. Would that be like Rec Park, Angle Park?
Yeah, Yep, and all of the little pocket parks,
Sherry Lindsay.
yep, and if you
Booth
look
Field.
on the Broome County
Okay.
GIS portal, it listed as City of Binghamton. There's no land use designation.
Okay.
So, there's a slim chance that that would be converted to another use, but without it having a designation to open space or park. Once you designate something, you can then have zoning regulations.
Right.
That would protect it.
Yes.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
And just to clarify, is Otsonigo a county park or a city park?
County.
County.
County. Yeah,
Oh,
I just
that's
wanted to
correct,
make sure
sorry.
we understood.
Well,
So you
just-
will only be doing city
Yep,
parks?
just
Okay,
city. Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I just have one other quick question to finalize the revitalization to the waterfront. Like, what would that entail? Like, what would
We sent the final draft for state comments. We got all the comments back. Once we address all the state's comments to the document, we send it back to them. They then approve it. And then we have to go through the seeker process. So it has to go through the impact statement review time, 30 days for people to comment. We have the comment period. Then it has to go before city council. It gets adopted by the state. So it's a big lengthy process and I don't know how to work it through. And we don't have our contractor support anymore. And they were the experts on that. So it was a 50-50 match. So the work we did was, changing it, updating it, and then working with them. And then the grant ended. So it's I've got all the comments back from the state and I'm working with our, Jamie Reppert is our state, LWRP. He's working with me to get the comments addressed, but some of them go beyond the time I have, so. It's like 2/3 done. We just need a little more help to get it done and in place. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. My
Thank you.
students appreciated it. I let class out an hour early. So I could come back. I invited them. Thank you.
Well, we're happy that you came.
Thank you, Juliet.
Okay, we have one more agency. Steve,
No,
do we
that would
think
be, I believe that's everybody. Oh,
Parks, are they coming? Oh, you hadn't heard back from them.
yeah, I talked to Pat the other day about it in its sort of a general sense, and I always do the reminders,
What
but
time were they scheduled?
I think they were supposed to come on right after the mayor's office. So if they're not here by now, I don't think they're going to
Okay.
be here.
Okay, so if everyone agrees, because Parks hasn't shown up, I don't see any reason for us to sit around and hope that they will. They were supposed to come right after the mayor's office, so.
And the
Yeah.
mayor's office couldn't do it because Megan just got back. She hasn't had time to. I think they know some numbers, but I don't think she was prepared yet. So,
Yeah,
but once I do get the thing from the parks, I'll make sure you guys get it. They
Okay.
still have to fill the sheet out. They still have to let you know because otherwise you don't know what
exactly.
specific projects to approve.
So if that is the case and there's no other business. John, can you speak, even hear the last question you asked, or you need to bring it closer? Because you have a soft voice and we.
Oh, trust me, I do not. But,
Well, it
I-
seems like you do.
my last question to her was just about the or the waterfront, like what was needed to finish that project. That's kind of what I was getting.
Oh,
at.
thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And I guess it's funny because I'm just starting to learn this stuff. And are you guys as like overwhelmed, not overwhelmed in a bad way, but like, wow,
It's very complex.
wow.
It's very complex. And what we do is very, very important because we are
Very.
being taken more and more seriously
Yeah.
as an advisory panel. So it is incumbent upon us to ask the right questions, which we are doing. And then when our deliberation, if you think this is fun, wait until we deliberate.
Well, but it's very interesting. I mean, it really is. But it also makes me realize how screwed up things are.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that's really hard to separate, and I was talking to someone about this today, is the issues that directly relate to the block grant, and then
Right.
the other issues that we as citizens feel. And sometimes I feel it would be nice to be able to spin out into a town hall kind of thing where we could discuss a lot of the
think so.
issues
I think that
that
would be
we see here, because technically some of the stuff we talk about has nothing to do with the grant itself, but we are a community that doesn't communicate well with one another. We're very isolated from one another, you know? So these are all things that as we progress, we can make recommendations to the mayor's office, who is now listening to us in a way that it never has before. So we are very important around this table. I hope you all know that.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to learn. Yeah, we're starting to learn how important it is.
Yeah, and don't feel bad that you're overwhelmed. That's why we got Steve.
I know. Thank you,
He's the best.
Steve's up there hiding.
He's the best.
He's
He'd
here.
like to
I
hide,
have
but
his
we know,
monitor.
we know where he
Okay, so-
lives.
He's like,
Yeah.
okay, so the short blonde with, who we ever all think is quiet is not going to be quiet anymore.
I think one of the hardest things is, and I've been on this now a couple of years, all the acronyms can just
Tell
get
me
your head
about it.
swimming.
Yeah.
And it's so, it's like, it's another language, just like if you go to a hospital and everybody starts speaking and all the hospitals speak, you don't get everything.
I think that's
going
why
because it's a
it's-
whole new language.
It's okay for us to ask, like I happen to know what PHCD means, but if you don't know, ask the person presenting. And I had asked Steve if he had a list of these acronyms and their definitions. Maybe we can start making our own.
Yeah.
So do it as you see, you know, and have these questions. There are no such thing as,
I
dumb
do full-
questions around here.
Well, good,
Full
you can
pages
make
every
one for
day.
the rest of us then.
Yeah, we need, send it over to Steve and he'll
But
make
Steve has
it,
nothing else to do.
he'll make it federally acceptable and send it back out to us. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys, Steve's been very careful to protect our privacy from each other. But in years past, we have all agreed that we could share our phone numbers with each other. I know, it helps sometimes. So Steve, is that something we can do?
Yeah, just whoever wants to sort of be on a shared phone number list, just let me know and I will just send me an email and I'll get you all together and give each other. Just make sure either I can send me an email with the number you would like others to be able to communicate with you at. And then if you don't send me an email, I assume you don't want other people to communicate with you,
Okay.
which is fine. Let's not judge anyone. But make sure it's the phone number you want me to use in case you have multiple phone numbers, like cell phone versus home phone versus work phone.
Okay, and if you miss the cutoff, you can always be added later if you want to. But
Absolutely.
I think it's nice if we can have that connection with each other. Any other comments and questions? This is a great time to do it.
Sorry.
No, we want to go home and get warm, right? It's Taco Wednesday.
Every day is good for taco.
Deb, you have a,
I would like to ask, and this is a Steve question, accessibility is an issue.
Okay,
The
yeah,
microphones are not for anyone who has any hearing impairment.
yeah.
Just getting in sometimes, and I'll speak privately with you about
Yeah.
that. We have the lift here that I believe needs maintenance. At what point do any of our funding sources provide for that? Because I know we worked hard to get that in. And it's been a great help, but
So CDBG funds can be used to remove barriers and to bring things into ADA compliance. My estimation is that terrifying elevator there is not in a usable condition or an adequately usable condition. So replacing it or doing a major overhaul, I think would be warranted and would be CDBG coverable. The same thing with accessing the upper floor here. I have talked to IT about that. And I don't know how much more we can do. This is a terribly designed council chambers, unfortunately. So making an accommodation for as many people as possible is definitely something we need to do. But yeah, going back to the CDBG funding specifically, yes, CDBG funding can be used to remove barriers. I think that's the terminology they use. So you can't build new with it, but you can definitely, if you have an existing situation, you can improve or fix it. So yes, in many ways, those things could be improved. So you know what, that's a good idea. I will let Lori know, and Chuck know in case they want to look at potentially having the mayor put some funding aside for those kinds of things. Cause I cannot remember the last thing I heard about the elevator rehab on that. But again, the elevator rehab's kind of pointless. You still got to come in through the outside if you can't. I mean, it's those stairs. I mean, this is a 70s architectural nightmare with city council chambers. We have ashtrays in the chairs. Come on. But yeah, and then improving that out there is not a great situation either. So yeah, we can fix that. Yeah,
Brutalism at its worst, finest worst.
And
but
Steve,
definitely talk to me.
Steve, can you tell us who Lori
Brutalism,
and
that was the type of architecture.
Lori, you said you were going to talk to Lori and
Okay, so sorry, Lori Clift is the IT as the sort of, but she's also kind of like the person in charge of all like the I want to say facilities, but she's not like she's maintenance. She's in charge of IT, but she would be in charge of things like getting the guards out there or getting work orders in to get things fixed and repaired. So she was in a meeting with myself and Chuck Shager regarding the elevator because it had come up. We've also had some discussions actually about just a complete overhaul. They just did the asbestos removal, I think last year or something, because there was that leak up there. And then, but it's the entire, yeah, this is not a great room. It's just really not.
no, it's not.
It's like some weird 1970s science fiction thing. So,
Urban renewal at its
it
worst.
definitely needs improvements for all kinds of people. People who have trouble with stairs, people who are coming in from the outside. So there's multiple issues there. And so I think this is probably like to complete overhaul of this room is probably millions and millions. I don't think they would be putting CDBG money, that much CDBG money into it, but if they could find another source, I could definitely supplement with the CDBG for improvements.
You bring up another question, and that is security. I was surprised that the police doors were open. The police had the doors open this time when I came in about 10:06.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't even know that we're meeting. Can we clarify that so that if people do get a little earlier, they will have access?
So the issue is probably the reason they were open today is because it's
'Cause
so
it's
cold
cold, yeah.
outside.
Yeah,
So the decision was, it used to be that the city hall was locked up at a certain point. We're going back to that locked up situation because there was somewhat of an abuse of using the foyer area as essentially a residential, as a temporary residence. The issue is that it's not that we're trying to kick people out. It's that that's a dangerous situation to be in because they're not being supervised. They're not being in a safe setting. It's not a place for people to be sleeping because they can be attacked. They can have their stuff stolen. We don't want that. And Jim, who was here earlier, had mentioned that. He says they really need to, they shouldn't stay there. They should, if they're going to go there for a second, they instantly call 911 or one of the street outreach to get them into a shelter or a hotel.
exactly. Because
But-
we're asking for every other Wednesday to have access.
Yes, so the way it was told to me was that the guards will come, the county guards or
Security
the
people?
security, Brim security, sorry, that's the term. Brim security is going to be here somewhere between 30 minutes and 15 minutes before the meeting starts.
And they never are.
So were they here 15 minutes before the
No.
meeting? Not today? even?
A policeman allowed me to go through. He was walking into the office.
Yeah, so for this meeting, it would be 6 o'clock. If they weren't there by 6, all I can really do is go to Lori and say Broom Security wasn't there by 6 o'clock.
They have been,
Um,
I don't know, I used to get here a lot earlier and they have never been here. And at 6 o'clock, they weren't even here. So
Yeah,
something is very wrong here.
okay. So I'll tell Lori about that. But the pre 6 o'clock, I don't think we can expect to get in the building before 6 o'clock. So I
But
think
if the
everybody
police-
needs to
If the
time
police
things.
know that, we can call the police and the police can let us in. If the police know that there's a CDAC meeting.
Correct, and we're on the calendar. It's on
But
all
the
the
guy-
meetings are on the calendar.
The guy who finally let me in didn't even know what the CDAC was. So, I mean, I think there's a
Yeah.
little bit of more
That's great.
communication that could happen.
I'm not sure. My understanding is once Lori notifies the security, she also notifies the police, but the police can look at I mean, they literally can look at the
No,
calendar
I
and see what's coming
understand,
up.
but somewhere there's a disconnect.
Yeah,
There's a
I'm not sure what it is. it's possible other committees are having the same issue. City council is fine because they're usually like
Right.
securities are 30 minutes ahead of
Well, you
time.
can tell them that we are as important to city council.
Okay.
Okay, no, I
Uh,
appreciate that. Are there any other issues that we want to talk about? Or can we entertain a motion to adjourn? Deb? Second? Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Good night, and thank you very much.